She was pouring tea, then vanished. In a single breath. Sunday morning, deep in Georgia's Oconee National Forest, a close friend of the Granger family arrived for their planned visit. She expected laughter, a creekside breakfast, the sound of children splashing in the water. But instead, she walked into a scene frozen in time, a half-eaten meal, a cooling teapot, the radio playing a song that never finished. The tent was still pitched, the car parked neatly. Everything was there except the family. Malik, Tyesha, Jalen. Zoe were gone. The family dog stared at her with a chilling stillness, as if they had vanished into thin air, in broad daylight, and the most terrifying part. No screams, no signs of struggle, no evidence. They were simply gone. The Granger family wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but maybe that is exactly what made them so easy to love. Malik Granger was a quiet, patient man, the kind of father who never needed to prove himself. He grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Savannah, where people taught each other how to live right, not how to get rich quick. After graduating from a vocational high school, Malik got a steady job at an auto repair shop, not flashy, but dependable. He was the guy who nodded first when passing you on the street, the coworker who'd switch shifts without a fuss if your kid got sick. He didn't drink much, didn't stay out late. His joy was coming home on time, playing soft jazz, and listening to his son talk about what he learned in class. Tyesha Granger, his wife, was the kind of woman who made an entire neighborhood feel at ease. A night shift nurse at an emergency center, she was used to staying alert, acting fast, and staying calm under pressure. No matter how tough the job got, Tisha never brought the weight of it home. Every morning when she came through the door, she'd peek in at her sleeping children before heading to shower, raised by a single mom who juggled 2 or 3 jobs just to get by. Tisha was determined to build a home filled with both love and structure. She was the type who wrote out weekly menus on a whiteboard, tracked every dollar in a budget folder, and made sure the family escaped the city at least once a month, even if just for a weekend of camping in a nearby park. Their children were their pride, Jalen. Age 7 was bright and curious. He kept a little notebook to sketch maps of the places he visited and jot down names of birds he spotted. Once, he told his dad, "When I grow up, I want to be an explorer like in the movies, but I don't need to be famous. I just want to know my way home." And Zoe, just 3, was the family's tiny heart. She had a habit of dancing whenever music played from her mom's phone, and each night, she insisted her dad tell her a story with a princess, a bear, and always, a part where everyone comes home together. The Grangers didn't have much money, but they had other things: connection, trust, and those quiet values everyone wishes they had. That Labor Day weekend trip to Oconee wasn't their first, but it would be the last time anyone saw them as a whole family. Their neighborhood wasn't fancy, but it had a way of making people feel safe. Wide porches, old chairs on lawns, neighbors calling to each other through open windows. It was the kind of community that looked out for one another. The Grangers weren't flashy, but they showed up for school events, babysitting when someone needed help, or donating to the church fair every summer. Malik once fixed the porch of an elderly neighbor, Mr. Thomas, after a storm. Tyesha often sent an extra plate of dinner to Ms. LaDonna down the street when she learned her husband had lost his job. Jalen was in 2nd grade at the local public school, described by his teacher as gently curious, always full of questions, but never interrupting. He shared his candy, held the door, and greeted every morning with a small bow. "No one taught him that," said Ms. Harper. "He just understood kindness in a way beyond his years." Zoe was still little, but her personality was already shining through to quiet, observant. Once, during a preschool parent meeting, Zoe quietly fetched tissues for a classmate with a runny nose. Her mom laughed, telling the story. She didn't say a word, just did the right thing. Probably got it from Grandma, quiet one in the family. Their steady, gentle presence made their disappearance feel like a gut punch. When word spread that the Grangers hadn't come back from the holiday trip, the whole neighborhood seemed to pause. Jalen's classmates asked their parents, "Where did he go?" Adults fumbled for answers. No one wanted to believe something bad had happened, but nothing made sense. Malik was punctual, never missed work without notice. Tisha always texted her mom when traveling. Even just for a few hours, Jalen had perfect attendance. The Grangers had never been a family anyone had to worry about until they vanished. Something felt off, but no one could quite name it. In the evenings that followed, porch lights stayed on longer. Neighbors checked in more often. Someone taped a photo of the Grangers to the neighborhood bulletin board with the words, "If you know anything, please. Don't stay silent." But everything led to the same truth: they didn't come back, and no one knew why. What haunts people about the Granger family is how they disappeared like a page torn from a book, right in the middle of the story, before the holiday. Taisha was still working her usual night shifts. That Friday morning, she texted her mom, "We're going camping at Oconee this weekend like always. If you need anything, check the freezer." Malik, as usual, checked the tires, changed the oil, and packed the emergency kit. He was always the one in charge of safety on these trips, the night before they left. Jalen packed his notebook, a flashlight, and a plastic compass he swore was really magic. Zoe clutched her stuffed bear. Physio must have so essential that if someone forgot it, the whole car would turn around. They left Saturday morning, leaving the house tidy like they'd be back that afternoon. Trash was taken out early. The living room window was cracked open, Taisha's usual habit for airflow. A couple next door saw them leave. Jalen waved from the back seat. Malik honked twice, their family's familiar goodbye signal. Nothing was unusual. No one seemed worried. It was just a weekend trip. But looking back, a few small details would later feel unsettling. Malik's friend, Andre, remembered him asking a few weeks earlier about quiet spots in Oconee, where not many people go. Andre didn't think much of it. Maybe Malik just wanted to avoid the crowds, but when police followed up, Andre hesitated. "We used to camp together," he said. Malik wasn't the off-the-grid type. Tisha had also searched online for signal dead zones, something she'd done before to avoid being called back into work. But this time, she didn't leave a printout like usual. And most chilling of all was a sticky note her mother later found on the fridge: "Don't forget to water the plants if we're late coming back." If we're late, why not when later? People wondered, did they sense something? Did someone approach them beforehand? Or was it all just coincidence? No one knows. But taken together, those tiny clues felt like a quiet, sad melody playing just beneath the surface until suddenly it stopped. That morning, Sunday, September 4th, the sky over Oconee National Forest was calm and blue. Soft sunlight filtered through the pines. It was the final day of Labor Day weekend, a time when many families savor one last breath of nature before returning to everyday life, according to records. The Granger family had arrived at their campsite the day before, choosing a spot near a small creek surrounded by woods, yet not far from the ranger station. It was a familiar location, not too remote, not too crowded. The last confirmed sighting came around 9:20 a.m. on Sunday. A man named Carter passed by the creek and saw Malik adjusting a nylon tarp while Taisha was washing Zoe's hands by the water. Jalen sat nearby, folding a piece of paper, possibly making a paper plane. Carter waved. Malik nodded back. Then they both went on with their day. Nothing seemed unusual, just a family enjoying a quiet morning in the woods. That same day, a friend of Taisha's, Renata, was planning to join the Grangers for lunch. As they had arranged earlier, she left home around 10:30 a.m., carrying sandwiches, juice, and a roll of old film to take retro-style photos with the kids. Around 11:00, she arrived at the site, but from the moment she stepped out of her car, she felt something was off. Too quiet. No laughter. No voices. None of the light music Taisha usually played from their travel radio. She walked closer. The tent was perfectly pitched, untouched by wind. Folding chairs were neatly placed by the picnic table. A half-filled teacup sat beside an open children's book. Sliced bread waited in a container. The thermos was sitting on the camp stove. And the radio, still on now, gave only static, as if it had lost signal just moments before. Their dog, Coco, was still there, but she didn't bark or wag her tail. She only stared at Renata with tired eyes, letting out a low whimper like she had just been through something strange. Renata called out each of their names: Malik, Taisha, Jalen, Zoe. No response. She ran around the site, down to the creek, checked nearby trails. Nothing. No footprints, no rustling, no sounds, no sign of where they'd gone. That was when Renata knew they hadn't walked off. They had vanished completely, without a trace. Renata wasn't someone who panicked easily. She had been Taisha's best friend since high school, had gone camping with the Grangers many times. She knew their routines. But this time, the silence at the campsite didn't just feel strange, it chilled her to the bone, her hands trembling. She returned to her car and called 911. "My friends, they're gone. Everything's still here, but no one's around." The dispatcher urged her to stay calm and describe the scene. Renata did her best, her eyes scanning the camp, hoping, just hoping that someone would suddenly walk out of the woods laughing, saying they'd gone berry picking. But the forest stayed silent. About an hour later, a ranger vehicle arrived, accompanied by the first deputy from the local sheriff's office. They surveyed the scene, took notes, snapped photos, initially. There wasn't much concern. Missing persons in the forest weren't rare hikers getting turned around, kids chasing animals, campers venturing farther than planned. But the more they looked, the more uneasy they became. The Granger's car was still there, locked, their gear untouched. Malik's keys were in his backpack. Taisha's phone was charging on a portable battery inside the tent. No sign of packing, no food or water taken. Nothing indicated they had left intentionally. As night fell, search and rescue was officially called in. News of the disappearance traveled fast back to Savannah. A group of neighbors formed immediately, some driving up to the site that same evening. Among them was Taisha's mother, who had just finished cooking dinner when she got Renata's call. She packed a towel and a bottle of juice, still hoping she'd find her granddaughter napping in the tent. Instead, she stood frozen, staring at a cold teacup and Zoe's stuffed bear lying on its side beneath a chair. By midnight, the site was cordoned off. Police brought in floodlights and expanded the search. Teams fanned out in every direction, along the creek, down the trails, into rocky slopes and hidden caves. They called out the names again and again, Jalen, Zoe, Tisha, Malik. But the only reply was wind through the trees. By morning, reinforcements had arrived. K9 units, thermal imaging gear, drones. They searched a 5-mile radius, checking every brush, stream, and crevice. But the results were identical to the first day. No blood, no drag marks, no footprints leading away. As if the Granger family had stepped into thin air and never returned. By Monday morning, the news had spread beyond Oconee. Entire family disappears in forest, no trace left behind. The headline ran on local news, and within hours, appeared on national broadcasts. A photo taken at last year's picnic. Malik holding Zoe. Jalen grinning beside a green tent was shown repeatedly on TV and online. The African-American community in Savannah, and across Georgia, began sharing the story at lightning speed. One question kept echoing. Why did it take so long for people to realize this could be something serious? 1 day passed, then 2, then 3. Still no signs. Search teams deployed drones with thermal scanners, dove into deep parts of the creek, scoured every abandoned cabin. At one point, there was Hopea, strange heat signature spotted in the trees, but it turned out to be a deer, curled in a bush. Each small flicker of hope blinked out just as quickly. On day 4, a volunteer named Marcus Hude, grown up exploring these woods, suggested expanding the search northwest, toward a cluster of cabins abandoned since the 1970s. He and 3 others set out. It was mostly process of elimination. No one really expected anything. But by late afternoon, with long shadows falling across the forest floor, Marcus stopped in front of a decaying cabin wrapped in vines. The wooden door was ajar, not quite closed. He gently pushed it open. Inside, no people. But in the dust-covered cabin was something that didn't belong. A small red hoodie, folded neatly, a faint brown stain on the collar mud. Maybe, or blood, the name Jalen stitched in green thread. Nearby, a tiny yellow plastic dinosaur lay on its side in the corner. Marcus called out, his heart racing. This couldn't be a coincidence. When police arrived, they confirmed it matched the hoodie Jalen wore in the picnic photo, and the toy Taisha's mother identified it immediately. That was the dinosaur Zoe used to chew on when teething. And the most chilling part, when the search team stepped outside, they realized there were no footprints leading in. But on the inside of the cabin's dusty window was the faint outline of a small hand. The discovery of Jalen's hoodie and the toy dinosaur in an abandoned cabin marked a turning point in the investigation. The disappearance of the Granger family was no longer an accident, no longer a case of getting lost or straying too far. Someone had interfered. Someone had entered their lives and deliberately left traces behind. But the police also knew the cabin had no cameras, no power, nothing to record who came and went. All that remained was a thick layer of dust and a faint handprint on the window, as if a child had stood there, looking out waiting for someone or afraid of something hiding in the woods. When news broke about the cabin, a local resident named Mr. Cleary, who lived about 7 miles from the park, called police. He said he had seen a silver SUV parked nearby a few days before the family went missing, but hadn't thought anything of it at the time. He described the driver as a man in his 40s, light-skinned, alone. But what raised eyebrows was this in his original statement. Right after the disappearance, Mr. Cleary had said he didn't notice anything strange. When asked why he changed his story, he hesitated. "I wasn't sure, I didn't think it mattered. But now, it feels off." His shifting account raised suspicions. Why did he stay silent at first? Did he see something he didn't want to be involved in? Or was he hiding something? Meanwhile, investigators decided to re-interview everyone who had been in the park the day the Grangers vanished. A family of hikers from Alabama, who had camped about 400 meters from the Granger site, recalled hearing an unusually loud engine revving that afternoon, around 3 p.m. It sounded like someone gunning a motor, then suddenly cutting it off. At the time, they thought it was just a mechanical issue. But in hindsight, they remembered something else. There was this urgency to it. They said, a short, sharp rev then silence, like someone was trying not to be heard. They also recalled seeing a man in a black baseball cap walking alone near dusk, heading toward the main road. No backpack, no gear, just walking, head down, eyes avoiding contact. But here's the problem. Traffic camera footage from the main park entrance showed no silver SUV, no man in a black cap, and the cabin where Jalen's hoodie was found, it wasn't on the official park map. Which raised a chilling question: who was moving through the forest, off the grid, through paths that weren't meant for visitors? Then came a strange phone call to the sheriff's tip line. A woman named Carla Thompson, who lived on the east side of the park near an old forestry station, said she saw something strange that Sunday afternoon, the very day the Grangers were reported missing. She had been walking with her young daughter along a lesser-known trail, about 1.5 miles from the Granger campsite, around 5 p.m., as daylight began to fade and shadows stretched long. She heard fast, heavy footsteps behind her, thinking it was a jogger. She pulled her daughter close to let them pass, but the man who ran by didn't look like someone out for a jog. He didn't make eye contact. Didn't respond when I said hello. She told police. His eyes were wide, his face was sweaty. Something wasn't right. When asked if she remembered any details, Carla paused. There was a reddish smear on the cuff of his sleeve. Could have been dirt, wine, I don't know. That detail caught investigators' attention. In photos of Jalen's hoodie, there had also been a reddish-brown stain on the sleeves still unidentified. When asked why she didn't speak up sooner, Carla looked down. I thought I imagined it, but when I saw the hoodie photo in the news, I knew I had to say something. Her statement created a new timeline. She had seen the man around 5 p.m., the same time the Alabama campers reported the strange engine sound. It raised the possibility someone left the cabin just after leaving the Granger site. But that same timeline raised another puzzle. Tech investigators, analyzing Malik's old phone found in the tent, discovered it had connected to a public Wi-Fi hotspot near the North Trailhead at 4:48 p.m. that Sunday. Here's the issue. The walk from the Granger site to that Wi-Fi point takes at least an hour on foot. So, what does it mean? Did someone else have Malik's phone? Did they not realize it would auto-connect to a known network? The truth was starting to slip through the cracks. Each witness statement opened a new layer of uncertainty. The unknown man, the red smear, the Wi-Fi signal out of place, and the child's hand on the cabin glass as if someone was still waiting, sometimes, in a missing persons case. There are people who aren't listed as suspects, but who know too much. As the search expanded around the old cabin, one volunteer stood out, Lamar Jennings. 52, a longtime Blue Ridge local, had once lived off-grid in the Oconee woods after leaving military service. He didn't have a permanent home often, staying in old trailers or abandoned sheds. When the Granger case broke, Lamar was among the first to volunteer. "I've been out here over a decade. If someone wanted to hide in these woods, I know where they'd go," he told police. At first, no one paid him much mind. No criminal record, no red flags. But when Jalen's hoodie was found, Lamar was the first to suggest searching a deep rock hollow, an unlisted spot not shown on official maps. "I used to stay there during the winter." He said nothing was found in the hollow. But the fact that he knew it existed raised questions. Why did he know every shortcut, every hidden path, every forgotten cabin? Even one's longtime residents had forgotten, one officer recalled. He didn't just know the trails. He knew where you could hide someone and never be found. Later, Lamar mentioned a dry creek bed about 3 miles from the Granger site, once home to a wartime shelter built decades ago. The team investigated and indeed found a collapsed shack, almost completely obscured by overgrowth. No people, but signs of recent activity, cigarette butts, ground impressions, an unopened can of food. There was no way to timestamp the scene, but it was enough to keep them looking. Lamar didn't react. "The forest can't hide anyone," he said. "Unless that person knows how to hide from the forest." It was hard to tell if that was wisdom or a warning. Later, investigators reviewed past records of unauthorized entries into protected areas. One name came up again from 2013, Lamar Jennings, caught building a makeshift shelter in a restricted zone not far from the cabin where Jalen's hoodie was found. When asked why he hadn't mentioned that, Lamar shrugged, didn't think old stuff mattered, but it made investigators pause, because if someone had lived here before, if someone knew how to move unseen, if someone could survive out here for weeks, then maybe, just maybe, that someone could take an entire family into the forest and leave behind nothing. The question was no longer who came here. It was who never left. And what are they hiding? 6 weeks after the Granger family vanished, as public attention began to fade and the media moved on to other stories, a handwritten letter arrived at the Savannah Police Department. No return address, no date. Just an old envelope containing a single piece of paper, folded into thirds. With a shaky line of blue ink, look into the file for Jerome Finch. He used to work with Malik Granger. That name Jerome Finch had never come up before. None of Malik's family, friends, or co-workers had mentioned him, but when investigators checked personnel records at the auto shop where Malik worked, they found him Jerome Finch, former technician, terminated in March, 6 months before the Grangers disappeared. The reason: repeated safety violations, altercations with co-workers, one of whom was Malik. According to a former co-worker, Jerome had once shouted at Malik in the garage after being corrected for using the wrong cutting tool. Malik didn't argue back, but he did report the incident to management weeks later. Jerome was fired. He didn't say a word. Just gave this weird half smile and walked out. The co-worker recalled, "But I heard him mutter once, real low one day, 'Y'all gonna see who's really smart around here.'" Jerome had lived in suburban Athens, Georgia, about a 45-minute drive from Oconee National Forest. No criminal record, but a sealed mental health file revealed he had undergone treatment for emotional disturbances following military discharge, by law. That information wasn't shared with employers. Police then reviewed Malik's phone data. One message stood out, sent in late August from an unlisted number: "Good luck on the trip. Don't forget who's watching." The number was traced to a prepaid SIM card, bought at a store near Athens, no name registered. But its last ping came from a tower near Oconee 2 days before the disappearance. A pattern was forming. Jerome Finch had a known conflict with Malik. He showed signs of instability. He was near the forest at the critical time, but his motive remained unclear. After his firing, Jerome disappeared. His old residence was empty. The new tenants said no one ever came back to get anything. Neighbors mentioned a man who looked like him hanging around the park early summer, but no one could say for sure. And more chillingly, one witness from Alabama shown police photos. confirmed Jerome's image closely resembled the man in the black cap seen near the Granger's camp the night they vanished. Jerome's military records, requested through the National Archives, revealed that he had served in the infantry with 2 tours in Afghanistan between 2008 and 2012. He was noted as technically capable, compliant with orders, but increasingly withdrawn after deployments. One report detailed an ambush that killed a team member. Jerome was reassigned to rear duty and never returned to the field. After discharge, his family moved out of state. He lived alone in a rental outside Athens. Between 2013 and 2021, he kept a low-profile, worked odd jobs, kept to himself. Neighbors remembered him as the man who stared too long into the woods, sometimes yelling at night for reasons no one understood. Police had been called once for loud noises. When they arrived, Jerome was found sitting shirtless, soaked in sweat, eyes wide open, saying nothing. Then came a string of short-term jobs, elevator repair, warehouse night shifts. At the auto shop, Malik's shop. He was known as the guy who didn't like being corrected. He never lashed out directly, but people agreed. When Jerome was around, the air felt colder. After being fired, Jerome vanished. His phone was disconnected. No bank activity. But then surveillance footage from the park entrance. 3 days before the disappearance showed an old gray pickup driving in at 6:12 a.m. The license plate was obscured. The driver wore a cap and sunglasses. No confirmation, but the build resembled Jerome. Investigators dug deeper. A week before the Grangers disappeared, Jerome made a purchase, paid in cash at a camping supply store in Macon. Items: tactical flashlight, folding knife, portable water filter. The store owner remembered him. He didn't say a word, but his eyes didn't look like someone buying gear for a vacation. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Jerome Finchance, a forgotten name, was now emerging like a shadow from the woods. Dragging behind him a question more terrifying than anything else. If it was him, why revenge mental break? Or something deeper? Even Jerome himself couldn't explain. At a closed-door meeting at the Oconee County Sheriff's Office, investigators laid out everything: the hoodie, the toy, the cabin, the strange phone data, the camera footage. Then came the detail that stunned the room into silence, based on scene analysis. Experts concluded the Granger family was likely not attacked at the campsite. There were no signs of struggle, no overturned gear, no screams, no blood. Everything was left in place, like they had stepped away briefly as if someone asked them to, or they believed they were coming right back, which meant whoever led them away wasn't a stranger, or at least wasn't threatening at first. One theory emerged. The suspect might have used a common ruse, posing as someone in distress: a broken vehicle, a lost child, an injury in the woods. Malik was kind-hearted. Taisha was a nurse. Her instinct was to help. Maybe they walked just a few hundred feet, thinking they'd be back. Jalen followed his dad. Zoe clung to her mom, and then every trace vanished. One chilling detail emerged from the cabin. Thin fabric soundproofing material had been crudely fastened behind the wooden door. Not enough for professional use, but enough to muffle a child's cry if someone was just a few feet away. That cabin wasn't just shelter. It had been prepared. The picture was getting clearer. A man with a grudge, a recluse with survival skills, a ghost in the woods, familiar with every hidden trail, someone the world forgot until he came back to settle a score, but still no body, no weapon, no DNA, no security footage. The case remains listed as primary suspect undetermined. The community was shaken. The Grangers left behind no notes, no calls, no final goodbyes. But behind the cabin, scrawled in charcoal, barely visible, someone had written, "I thought I knew the way out." But the forest closed behind me. No one knows who wrote it. No one knows who took the last step out of the woods. But one heartbreaking question still hangs in the air. Could one of them still be alive, just unable to speak? Just when the investigation seemed to be zeroing in on a single suspect, Jerome Finchone. Unexpected detail shook everything off course. While combing through cellular data from the area surrounding Oconee National Forest during the week of the Granger's disappearance, investigators picked up an anomaly. Another device had connected to the ranger station's Northside Wi-Fi just hours after the presumed time of the family's vanishing. The device didn't belong to any family member or to Jerome Finch. It belonged to Renata Fields, the same Renata who had discovered the empty campsite that Sunday morning. Tyesha's longtime best friend, the one who called 911. At first, police chalked it up to coincidence. Renata had given a reasonable account, had known the family for years, but when they reviewed her phone's GPS data, something troubling emerged. A 90-minute gap between when she claimed to arrive and when she actually made the 911 call. Renata said she arrived around 11 a.m. and called authorities within minutes of finding the camp empty. But GPS records showed her phone near the abandoned cabin where Jalen's hoodie was found at 9:30 a.m., a location not listed on any official park maps, and one almost no tourist would know about. Why had she been there, and why didn't she mention it? Renata was called in for re-interview. At first, she was defensive. "You think I had something to do with this," she snapped. But when pressed, she finally admitted, "I've been to that cabin before once. With Taisha, back in high school, we ditched class and went exploring." She claimed she had passed by out of nostalgia, then returned to the Granger site. But her statement contradicted her original timelines. She had said she went straight to the campsite. Now the case was turning sideways. If Renata knew about the cabin, maybe she'd been there before. And if she was near it that morning, had she seen something and stayed silent? Out of fear, police didn't publicly name her as a suspect. But the rumor mill didn't wait. Online, speculation exploded. Some accused her of jealousy, claiming she resented Tyesha's perfect life. Conspiracy theories flooded social media. Renata deactivated her accounts. She eventually left town under the weight of mounting suspicion. That was the moment when the case shifted from mystery to paranoia. Who was telling the truth? Who was lying? And if you can't even trust a best friend, who can you trust? 3 months after the disappearance, long after the news coverage had quieted, a local hunter named Travis Coleman contacted police while checking animal traps in a rugged, unsearched area 10 miles south of the Granger campsite. He found something strange. He led officers to a low-lying clearing choked with tall grass and rocks. There, deep in a bush, they found it a woven thread, braceletted, yellow and blue. Zoe's grandmother was brought in. She broke down in tears. "I made that for her when she was born. There's only one." The bracelet sent a chill through the entire team, far from the cabin, far from the campsite. No tracks led in or out, but it was proof that, at some point, Zoe had been there. Forensic techs scoured the site. On a nearby rock, they found a faint scuff like someone had slipped. Beneath it, caught in a crevice, was a small scrap of fabric, faded, frayed, but with just enough of the purple floral pattern that matched the hair ties Taisha wore visible in dozens of family photos. Suddenly, the question wasn't just, where did the Grangers go, but why were they way out here? The bracelet was found 5 miles away from the cabin, in the opposite direction from any marked path. Had they been taken there? Were they chased? Was the family separated? A darker theory took shape. Some were kept in the cabin, others forced deeper into the forest, perhaps as punishment, or because the captor couldn't control all 4 at once. But investigators hit another wall. There were no tire tracks, no sign of any vehicle having passed through in months, which meant if the Grangers were moved there, they were moved on foot. And if that was the case, who had the strength, the knowledge of terrain, and the time to lead 4 people, including a 3-year-old, deep into the wild? The obvious answer: someone who lived in the woods, someone who knew how to move unseen. But now, the name Jerome Finch no longer felt like the only answer, because even those helping with the investigation were no longer beyond suspicion, as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The investigation fell into a familiar trap: distrust. Over 100 days had passed. No DNA, no bodies, no new leads. The forest began to feel like it was hiding the truth on purpose, as volunteer teams thinned out. A small breakthrough reignited everything. A drone technician, reviewing thousands of aerial photos from the week of the disappearance, spotted something in one frame captured from above, about 7 miles from the campsite, a small glint of light. Zoomed in, it looked like a reflective thermal blanket, the kind used in survival kits. No one had noticed it before. It had been dismissed as litter. But when they mapped its position, it lay directly between the cabin and the location where Zoe's bracelet was found. A search team rushed in. But the blanket was gone. What they found instead was a patch of earth flattened, compressed, like someone had once set up camp, then vanished quickly. No trash, no fresh tracks, but enough to revive an old theory. Someone was still living out there, maybe a Granger, maybe the person who took them that night. A new wave of conspiracy flooded the internet. Some claimed Malik staged it all, fleeing from debts, starting a new life off-grid. Others dug up a loan he'd been denied 2 years prior. Rumors spread that Tiesha once told a coworker, "Sometimes I just want to disappear." No one could verify any of it, but online. Facts weren't necessary for suspicion to take root. A popular crime podcast stoked the flames. They suggested Jalen, the 7-year-old with the explorer's notebook, might have left a hidden message somewhere in the woods. Fans flocked to Oconee with drones, magnifying glasses, metal detectors, even blank journals to connect with Jalen. The grief that once united people now divided them. 2 camps formed. Those who believed the Grangers were victims, and those who believed they had chosen to vanish. Amid the chaos, Tisha's mother, Rosa, broke her silence on live TV. Her voice was cracked. "Worn. I don't know what happened, but my daughter would never leave her babies. And Malik, he wasn't perfect, but he was the kind of dad who sang lullabies to his kids. Head bowed, soft voice, sometimes. What we know for sure is the only thing that keeps us upright in the storm. But for investigators, for the public, for those still watching this case unfold, trust had fractured. No one was completely innocent anymore. No theory was completely certain, and perhaps the most terrifying truth was this: every possibility still fit, and every one of them could be wrong. Every disappearance carries an invisible expiration date. When the calls echo with no reply, when the searchlights dim and crews pack up, people start calling it an old case. But for the Granger family, there is no end date, no bodies, no letters, no goodbye messages, no surveillance footage, no blood, no one turning back. They simply vanished in broad daylight, in the middle of the forest, in the center of a life full of love and every reason to stay. And maybe that's what makes this case so impossible to let go. A year after they vanished, Oconee National Forest remains open. New families pitch tents, children splash in the creek, and near the spot where the Grangers once camped, someone has placed a laminated photo, weatherproofed and quietly waiting. 4 faces, smiling in front of a green tent. Hands clasped, eyes steady on the camera. Below the photo, a handwritten message reads, "We were here. And if you see something, say something." Every Sunday, a retired volunteer, one of the first to search for them, still walks past the old site. "I don't know if they're alive," he says, "but something about this place won't let me forget, like the forest is holding on to a promise it hasn't finished yet." No one has been arrested. No one has been cleared. The trails lie still under the trees. The abandoned cabin decays a little more each day, and the question remains if a family like the Grangers, gentle, loving, united, can vanish without a trace. Could it happen to anyone? Maybe the most painful part isn't that they disappeared. It's that someday the world may stop looking, and their disappearance will become part of the forest. We can map every inch of Oconee. We can analyze footprints, stitch together phone data, match a hoodie, a toy, a torn piece of cloth. But maybe what makes the Granger disappearance so haunting isn't that we haven't found them. It's that deep down, we fear their story is a warning, that the quietest people, the kindest souls, those who don't shout or demand attention, can still disappear, and the world might not notice. And when that happens, who will remember them a year from now? 2 years. 10. You may not have known the Grangers, but surely you've known a father like Malik, calm, devoted, steady, a mother like Teshesh, shouldering every burden without complaint, a curious child, a little girl who danced whenever the music played. We may never know what happened in those Georgia woods, but we know this sometimes. Disappearance isn't measured in miles, it's measured in memory, and memory only lives if someone keeps telling the story, even if it's a whisper. Even if it's just once in a lifetime,